So imagine you're fighting a battle, but it's on so many different fronts at once, you don't even know which way to turn. Well, that's been the reality for a man named Sonny-James Keijser. This is the story of his incredible, decade-long fight for justice against a system where it seems like every door he opens just leads to another one that's locked shut. Okay, let's dive right in.
So just this year, in early 2024, there was this massive breakthrough. The highest court in the Netherlands actually sided with Keijser. They completely overturned a lower court's decision that had stripped his family of control over his mother's life and all their assets. I mean, that's a huge win, right? You'd think so.
And here's the kicker. Even with that massive victory from the nation's highest court, almost nothing has actually changed for the family. Their property is still gone, their assets are gone, and the whole situation is just stuck. So that brings us to the real question we're going to dig into. If you win the legal battle, but you lose everything in the process, have you really gotten justice at all?
To really get how this all happened, we've got to go back to the beginning. This whole thing started with two totally separate crises that just crashed into each other and created this absolute perfect storm of injustice.
So on one hand, you've got Sonny-James Keijser, this young, driven entrepreneur, director of his own digital media company. He's the picture of ambition. But at the very same time, this completely different and totally false identity was being built for him, all without him even knowing it.
And this is just wild. For more than 10 years, a professional journal for youth care services used his photo without any permission. They slapped it on their covers, used it as a logo. He became the face of a troubled teen. But here's the thing. He never had anything to do with youth services, not once. He says this was basically character assassination. It was slander that painted this false, negative picture of him in the minds of the exact same authorities he'd have to deal with years later. While all that was happening, another storm was brewing in the background. You might have heard of it, the Dutch child care benefits scandal, the toeslag affair. It was this national nightmare that wrongly accused thousands of families of fraud, ruining lives. And yeah, the Keijser family was caught right in the middle of it. This national crisis became the terrible backdrop for their own personal one.
And this is where everything collided. The huge financial strain and just the emotional toll from the benefits scandal made the family vulnerable. And Keijser argues that this vulnerability was then completely exploited by a whole chain of institutions, which ultimately led to his family losing control of, well, everything.
So let's break down exactly how this went down. His mother, Grace, her health wasn't great, so she moved in with him. Then in July 2022, a care facility, Amstelring, files for an involuntary detention order, claiming there's a crisis at home. Keijser insists those petitions were just full of incorrect and misleading information. But that one action set off this unbelievable domino effect. A court appointed an outside administrator, Buffen, and gave them total control over the family's assets. And we're not talking about a small savings account here. This included a huge real estate portfolio, the very foundation of a development project, a dream Keijser had been working on for 2 decades. And this right here shows the devastating result. The administrator, Buffen, the very company that was supposed to be protecting his mother's interests and their heritage, they sold off a key family property. Keijser claims it was sold for half of its official value. He even tried to buy it himself to save it, but he was ignored, partly because he was stuck waiting for a notary to make a simple calculation about his inheritance. So while he was trapped in this bureaucratic nightmare, the family's legacy was just sold right out from under them.
The total damage, both material and immaterial. We're talking lost property, the rights to a planned development of 60 apartments. The family estimates it's well over €1 million. A lifetime of work, a future dream, just gone, shattered.
Okay, so their lives are completely upside down. Their assets are being sold off. You'd think getting some straight answers would be the absolute bare minimum, but nope. Instead, the family just slammed into a wall of total institutional silence. He tried, desperately, to just get a clear picture of what was going on with their own finances, their own property, but every single request for basic information was met with a brick wall. Each institution just pointed their finger at somebody else, and it created this bureaucratic maze that was just impossible to get out of.
I mean, just look at this ridiculous loop. Keijser goes to the banks for financial statements. The banks say, oh, sorry, that was during the administration period. We can't give you those. You got to ask the administrator. So he goes to the administrator, Buffen, and asks for the records and a full accounting. And what does he get? Nothing. Absolute radio silence. How are you supposed to fight for justice when you're being denied the basic facts of your own case?
And the fight, it just got tougher from there. What you're seeing here is an email from his legal aid provider. They're actually refusing to cover the cost for an outside lawyer, basically telling him his case isn't viable enough. So here he is, fighting this incredibly complex battle against multiple powerful institutions, and the very system that's supposed to help people access justice is just shutting the door in his face.
But Keijser just refused to give up. He took this fight all the way to the top, to the Dutch Supreme Court. And honestly, against all odds, he won.
So, this is the really crucial part. The Supreme Court formally and completely overturned the lower court's decisions. The entire legal basis for the mentorship and administration that took control away from his family, it was just wiped away. It was an absolutely massive legal vindication for him.
So why did he win? Well, the court found that some really basic, crucial legal procedures were just flat out ignored. Specifically, his mother's other children, Keijser's own siblings, were never even properly notified or involved in the original case. That's a fundamental error. It proved what Keijser had been shouting from the rooftops all along. The whole process was flawed right from the very start.
A Supreme Court victory. That should have been it. That should have been the end of the story, the moment justice was finally served. But incredibly, for the Keijser family, it was just another dead-end turn in this impossible labyrinth. So why did this huge win feel so hollow? Because the ruling was only procedural. It didn't order the return of the sold property or award a single euro in damages. The case was sent back for a new hearing, but months later, nothing has been scheduled. Then, in a final, unbelievably cruel twist, after his mother passed away, a different court approved the administrator's final accounting. That move basically slammed the door shut on that whole avenue of complaint. It's unbelievable. One part of the justice system undid the victory from another.
So now, they're just left in this limbo. They have a piece of paper from the highest court in the land saying the system failed them, but they have absolutely nothing to show for it. The property's gone, the money's gone, and that 20-year dream of rebuilding, it's just on hold, waiting for the next move from a system that's already taken so much.
And that brings us right back to that huge central question. This unbelievable story of persistence, it forces all of us to ask, if the system can completely break you, financially and emotionally, and even a win in the highest court can't make you whole again, then what does justice really even mean? For Sonny Keijser, this fight is still far from over.